What is going on, Lieutenant here, back with another Honkai Star video, and today I'm talking about the whole concept of character buffs and why it's actually an insanely good thing that we are actually getting these for Starro. So the way this video is going to go is, first I'm going to be just talking about what these actual buffs I'm referring to are, in case people are still unaware. Then I'll be talking about why they're actually good on these characters, so it's not like a slight buff that's not really going to change much about them, at least from what we do know, so there will be some spoilers if you don't want to know about that territory. As it is still unconfirmed info, technically but reliable, it will be spoilers, so you can skip ahead. And then finally, I will be talking about why it's a good thing for all these characters, what this means for people that still want to go for older characters, still want to use older characters, and so on. That's all I wanted to say. Before I get into the video, if you guys find this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of Star Wars content and guides, and let's get straight into the video. So leading it off with, what are these character buffs? If you are unaware, it was confirmed a few live streams ago where characters that were older were going to actually get a buff. And the confirmed ones to start off was Kafka, Blade, Jinglu, and Silverwolf. For a while, we weren't actually sure what these character buffs were going to be, if it was just going to be a slight change where it really doesn't impact them much in the current meta and such. So all we knew is that older characters were going to get strengthened. This was just the batch they chose for the first bit. We still don't have any other info on other characters getting buffed just yet, but it mainly begged the question if these buffs would actually be enough. Now, briefly talking about the actual character buffs for the characters from what we do know. So once again, this is technically 3.4 spoilers with more unconfirmed info going around. So if you don't want to know this, take it all with a grain of salt or just skip ahead. So we do know with all the stuff coming out that these buffs are actually very significant. It completely changed the way how Jinglu worked, making her HP scaling. It fixed Blade entirely with his actual split scaling of attack and HP, making him purely HP based. Silverwolf became an AoE debuffer, practically making her the best debuffer in the current meta we do have, assuming she doesn't get any more changes, which is insane. She went from probably one of the worst, where you went to just use Payla overall, just because Payla was AoE and Silverwolf wasn't, to making Silverwolf's full defense shred AoE, making the bug implant better, making her technically do more damage as you need a less effect hit rate, and so on. And then when it comes to Kafka, she also practically became the nihility harmony that people were looking for, massively being able to increase these dot characters' attack, being able to proc the actual dots on enemies in more ways than one, not having the follow-up attack be exclusive to basic attacks. Everything she did do to be an enabler practically made her an enabler slash budget harmony for this team now. So all these changes, with the exception of Jinglu. Jinglu is kind of like in the spot. Blade got really good changes. Silverwolf got insanely broken changes. Kafka got insanely broken changes. Jinglu, on the other hand, she is going to perform insanely better, but for now, what we do know, she still is going to perform better than she would. And at worst, since she does have a actual team-wide HP drain, you can still do some shenanigans with Castress and such, because Jinglu does drain the team HP. So if we ever do get an HP support that's AoE buffs regarding HP specifically, Jinglu on that team would actually be able to benefit from it, and actually puts her on a strong team, because putting another HP drainer DPS with Castress is very strong, and Jinglu would actually be able to very much benefit from that as well, now being an HP scaler. So she does have more going for her than she would previously. So with all these changes in mind, we do know that these buffs can actually pretty much revive a unit entirely. Like, Blade is now able to finally clear endgame very comfortably, especially with the actual buffs he has. Running him with Hyacine Tribi, he's able to practically effortlessly clear endgame now. Run him -1 support, Sunday or Bronya, it really doesn't matter. Sunday's obviously better, but Bronya works. Even run him as a base speed with a hyper speed Sparkle, Sunday, Bronya, so on. Blade with those builds, and then pairing with Tribi, you don't even need Hyacine, but Hyacine is definitely really good, especially with her light cone. With his damage finally being actually good, and a lot more consistent, having the taunt, it's so much better for Blade, and he's actually able to clear all three modes a lot more consistently, which is insane considering the power creep in this game with older units. Before these buffs, it practically was really hard to make these older characters clear, but now Blade's actually able to do it. Jinglu with these actual modern supports was still able to do it already, but with the HP scaling stuff that's changing and potentially more HP regarding stuff in the future, she's going to be able to clear it even easier as well. And this is also, not accounting for the fact that she might get even better changes later. Silverwolf is going to practically once again be the best debuffer in the game. So any team where you want to run a debuffer, Silverwolf is usually going to be the #1 slot for that. The only time she isn't the best is going to be like a E2 Acheron team where you just want one Nihility character and you're running E0 Silverwolf vs E0 Jiaoqiu. Jiaoqiu usually is going to outperform because of the way of how his stacks work and being able to supercharge Acheron a lot faster, plus the ultimate vulnerability. So with Acheron, Jiaoqiu will still be better, and then we'll also be competing with Cypher in that case. But overall, it's still going to be insane for that team and other teams to combine. But overall, it's going to still be insane for that team. If you do have Silver for that team, it's going to be insane for other teams you put her on. She's going to be just a absolute unit. And then Kafka, she is going to be the start of the Dot Revival. She just needs another Dot unit that's strong to pair with her. Kafka now practically does have no glaring issues with the support she gives to these actual effect hit rate based Dot characters, which is practically all of them. The big attack increase is going to amplify Dot a lot. She being able to proc it in more ways than one now. Being able to have the follow-up attack easier. It's just going to be such a good character to actually help with Dot. Now she's just going to need someone else that pairs well, which we do seem to be getting someone soon. So that might be a change. And then finally, for the main point of this video, why is this actually good for the players that may still want to use older characters because maybe it's one of their favorites, or want to actually summon for these older characters but they're scared to because, you know, meta-wise they want to clear endgame, but with these characters and the power creep, that realistically there is no point to pull one of these characters over one of the newer ones. I will flat out say now, even with these buffs, it's still not going to make them to a point where they're better to pull than modern DPSs, because obviously these are age-old DPSs coming out around the release of the game or the first Annie of the game. Obviously these characters are not going to perform as well as the characters that are releasing, you know, after the second year and such. So it's not like where these character buffs are actually going to make them straight up better to use, like Blade's not going to be better than Mide, Jinglu's not going to be better than Castris, and so on. This does, however, put these older characters in places where they do compete on the lower side to the point where they still can now comfortably clear endgame. It still will incentivize you to actually pull for modern supports, because any new DPS, any old DPS is going to benefit from these new broken Harmony supports. Any hypercarry meta benefits from Sunday when he came out, any hypercarry meta, and practically any team that really isn't break benefits from Tribi. That's still not going to change. You know, these older characters would benefit from these new supports pre-buff and now post-buff. So those are two core concepts that are really not going to change. Except technically, if the older character gets buffed to the point where they're strong enough to work without these modern supports, then it's a different story. But the reason this is actually such a good change is because now it's actually incentivizing for you to, you know, either dust off the old character. Maybe they're your favorite, but you really just couldn't clear with them anymore. Maybe you didn't have the investment, you didn't have the right supports. Or maybe you're someone that came into the game later, maybe you just started around second Annie and you have a favorite character, and let's say it's one of the older characters. Like, let's say your favorite character was practically just someone like Fushuan. Fushuan still can work, but, you know, obviously she's overshadowed with other sustains, especially with the healer side being so broken now, Aventurine being broken on that side. With the idea of character buffs, there's no telling when she actually might actually end up being buffed and could end up outperforming someone like Aventurine even. Maybe the mitigate will become even better, maybe she'll provide even better buffs for your team, she'll become more tanky, she'll have more charges. And then when it came to old DPSs, there's no telling when now Danheng will actually be buffed as well. And, you know, I did mention that they won't outperform 3.x DPSs and so on. But who knows, maybe they actually will take the route where they end up buffing these characters to the point they're actually strong enough to compete, or even better than some modern DPSs. It's definitely a possibility. Obviously, we don't have a case like that yet. Like Silverwolf, again, becoming the best debuffer, you know, that's kind of different on its own side. When it comes to actual DPSs and stuff, then it's a bit iffy because we don't know just yet. We're going to have to wait and see. But we definitely know that these characters are able to be brought up to near the levels of modern DPSs to the point where they can actually clear very easily. And so this is great for the people that still want to use older characters. Maybe, again, it's just one of your favorite characters. Maybe they have your favorite kit to use, but they're more outdated. Like, again, Danheng, maybe you don't have the skill point usage characters to help them with that. Or maybe you don't have Tribi to actually amplify his damage, or your supports are busy with other teams. Your Danheng doesn't have the greatest investment. With these character buffs, he's going to perform very good, and that further amplifies with any future investment you would be doing on him, and also maybe already have on him. Like, E2 Danheng to this day can still actually do pretty well. Obviously not as good as E0 current DPSs, but still can definitely compete and clear very easily at E2. Imagine a E2 Danheng when he is buffed. Having that actual thing that probably still, when he does get buffed, being able to complete clears with this current E2, and now that being amplified by the fact that he can now actually have these character buffs that maybe make him do more damage, maybe have him have more ways to offset skill point usage, give him more energy from our ults, which would be insane for E2, maybe buff the actual effect of his, early E1 and maybe even his E2, who knows. We know they actually do buff Eidolons as well. So there's so much going on for these older characters. They can actually become to a point where they can compete with these later DPSs or, later supports, later sustains. Or maybe they're not at the same level, but they could still clear comfortably, which is the actual main thing. Most people that play the game do not care about zero cycles and high cycles, and if that was the case, you still can do them with these new buff characters relatively easily. I've actually seen and tried zero cycles with the new Blade. It's definitely possible, but the whole idea for most of these buffs is going to bring them back to the point where they actually will be able to clear endgame without, struggling too bad. Like a free-to-play player that has, maybe E0S1 to E0S0 of these characters maybe struggle a lot to get Blade to clear at a good pace at a more recent time. So, like, last MLC, this MLC, so on. But with these buffs, it's actually going to make it a lot more plausible. And these buffs can actually make them strong enough to the point they can be missing one of their best options. Maybe you don't like the both of them because there's a lot of people that don't like Tribby, so they're not going to get Tribby. A lot of people that don't like Sunday, so they're not going to get Sunday. If the buffs make them strong enough, they can work actually just well without these characters. Like Blade with the buff can actually perform pretty well without Tribby. I've tried it. Same thing as without Sunday, just using Bronya or Sparkle instead. The whole idea is these older characters are going to actually be able to compete now with these buffs if obviously done right. We don't know future characters. We're just going to hope they are done right. But if they do the same length of stuff for them, and as we go on to further updates, the buffs become even stronger, then it actually is going to be a good idea to play for your favorites again, because you're able to summon for a old Blade character. Maybe you don't have him or you don't want to lose the 50-50. If he is your favorite character, and now you're actually able to clear with him again, especially if you do have good investment, but even without the full proper investment you would need to make him clear nowadays. With the buffs, he's actually able to perform well and doesn't need everything to be completely optimal to actually work well. And this also applies to other characters that are outdated. Again, Fuxuan, Danheng, Topaz, especially Argenti, so on. There's so many characters that can use a lot of buffs. This also applies to 4-stars, but that's a whole separate video. The idea of buffs makes it to where you're actually going to be able to pull these old characters, use the buff, and actually be able to clear well with them, assuming they do them to the point where they actually can do that, just like this current patch. Which is going to be fantastic for the players that want to clear with their favorites, and their favorite might be an older character, which is a lot of the player base. A lot of people's favorites to this day is Jinglu, Kafka, Blade, so on. And it's quite hard to clear with them without these buffs. With these buffs, it's a lot easier to clear with them. Like, it's insane that with these buffs, Dot can actually clear within like 2 cycles. So again, the whole idea I'm trying to get at is with these buffs coming in to revive characters, it's actually going to be great for players that want to summon for older characters. Maybe they started playing later and one of the older characters became their favorite, but they don't exactly want to summon because, potentially they're afraid of the power creep thing. They want to clear endgame and use their resources well. That is why these old buffs are going to be great for players like that, and especially for players that already maybe have the character and really would love to clear with them, but they just can't. This will allow you to dust them off, maybe upgrade their builds. If you want to invest into them post-buff, then that's probably going to be a good option, as their Eidolons could even be buffed. There's a lot going for these old characters now. Now the whole thing of them getting buffs is actually going to be a potentially great thing, and that is the actual point of the video. And that's all I wanted to say. That is the entire video. Let me know what you guys do think about this whole predicament of buffs. Are you guys also happy to see that your old favorite potentially now can actually have a good time to shine and actually be able to clear endgame with relative ease with the right investment? Which, technically you could say that about them currently, but by right investment, I mean maybe lower sided investment, or just to the point where you have a general working team for them that wouldn't work now that can actually end up working post-buff. I'm sure a lot of people will be excited for it. Let me know what you guys think. Also, comment down below who you really want to actually get a buff, as there's a lot of older characters that can definitely benefit from some buffs. But yeah, that's all I want to say. Peace out.